guys. So for this video, I just wanted to go through and kind of explain where I lie or where I stand on the issues that kind of make up where your political ideology is. This is a common test that you can do online called the Political Compass, and it kind of will place you in your square where you fall politically. So we're just going to go through these kind of one at a time, kind of give you a little bit of my explanations, and then we'll move on. So if economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interest of transnational corporations. Yeah, strongly agree. So if we're going to have globalization, it should benefit all humans, people, as we progress further as a species, rather than trying to make the most bang for your buck for your company. I'd always support my country, whether it was right or wrong. Strongly disagree. The Constitution tells us that we should, be skeptical of our leaders as well as hold them accountable for actions that are unjust. And I strongly believe in that, in the Constitution, and the framework in which we were, designed upon. No one chooses his or her country at birth, so it'd be foolish to be proud of it. This is an interesting one. I wouldn't say I'm anti-nationalist, but I could definitely see what they're saying here, but I'm going to disagree. I think it's okay to be proud of your country. I don't know if it's necessarily foolish. Our race has many superior qualities compared to the other races. Yikes. No. I don't even have to explain that one. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Yeah, I mean, it can be for sure. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Strongly disagree. It's ridiculous, the amount of war crimes that go on all the time. There's now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. I think this is more talking about things like The Tonight Show as well as The Late Show or all those other kind of things where you have kind of like comedy trying to interweave with politics, but I don't think it's worrying. I would say that it's, if anything, more helpful. Like John Oliver, for example, a lot of people wouldn't understand anything about the issues if they didn't watch John Oliver, and he has a way of keeping people who are otherwise not really interested in political issues interested in what he's talking about. So I'm going to say disagree here. All right, people are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. Yeah, for sure. I think class issues of economic standing is at the root of a lot of the problems that we see. Of course, race plays into that, and minorities can testify to that as well about how being a minority race is what leads to you necessarily having, or more likely than not, being in a poor socioeconomic class as well. But at the end of the day, I think if we lifted everyone out of poverty, we would do a lot better at seeing everyone as equals. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. Some of my economic stances are pretty whack. They're not really all that educated, to be honest with you. Economic policy is not something I'm really knowledgeable in. However, I do understand the fear of inflation and dropping the value of the dollar. So I think I would agree with this, because we're never going to be at no unemployment, and having too little unemployment is actually not good for the economy either. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. Strongly agree. If a corporation can save money by destroying the environment, they will, and they've been shown to do that time and time again. So yeah, you got to hold them accountable. From each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. Each according to his ability, each according to his need. I feel like this is more like hardcore communism, and like the distribution of resources based on people's needs rather than like what they want. So I don't know. I'm not really all for full-on communism. It just doesn't really work in practice. Democratic socialism, however, would be different, but this seems to be trying to take it a little bit further than that, and I think that's what the fundamentally part, so I'm going to disagree. The freer the market, the freer the people. Disagree. There's plenty of people who are slaves to the market, as well as who are in horrible situations in which their rights are being oppressed and they don't really have freedom to move to where they want or have the job that they want because they're stuck in this constant loop that capitalism has put us in. And a free market, as we're seeing, is not necessarily indicative of a free society. It helps, sure, but laissez-faire government has kind of been shown not to work. It's a sad reflection of our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, we definitely care way too much about money and making profits off of anything we can rather than trying to support one another or the planet, you know? Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. I mean, if it wasn't, though, like, you wouldn't be able to have your way of life as it is now. So, disagree. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. Strongly agree. Yeah, the fact that there's people who are out there making millions of dollars just doing nothing but managing our money, or their investors' money, and they don't actually contribute anything to the society. No art, no entertainment, no. They don't make anything. They literally just move money around, and they make a bunch of money doing it. Isn't good. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. Again, I'm not really an expert in economic policy, but I'm assuming protectionism means like tariffs, making sure that your country's goods are competitively priced. So I would agree. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. Strongly disagree. Companies need to be held accountable for the damage that they're doing to their environment, as well as the jobs that they create, and as well as making sure that the environments that they create, both in the workforce and for their consumers, are not discriminating against anyone in any way. The rich are too highly taxed. No. The rich have had a huge tax break for the last few decades. If we go back to the era of Teddy Roosevelt or FDR, you could see tax rates go up as high as 80% for those who were in the top 1%. I believe in a tax rate for anyone who makes over $1 billion should be 100%. You don't need to be making more than $1 billion a year. It's absolutely ridiculous. There's nothing that you're doing with that money that's been productive so far to society, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So, yeah, I think you should be fine with $1 billion. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. Those with the ability. So this is like, do you believe in privatized healthcare? So I don't. The privatized healthcare system in the United States is a failure. I mean, that's not even just my opinion. You can look at any study, international study that's been done. The United States ranks almost dead last in every category in terms of patient satisfaction, patient outcare, doctors, as well as prescription drug costs, hospitalization costs, surgeries. Everything in the United States costs way more than it does elsewhere in the world because we have this privatization in which people with the means have been paying so much for these practices and these services that that's just what they're used to at this point. Government should penalize businesses that mislead the public. Strongly agree. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. So in a free market, you can't have a monopoly. I would say that's generally true. Abortion when the woman's life is not threatened should always be illegal. Strongly disagree. Abortion is an issue that shouldn't really be as much of a political issue or even a religious issue, in my opinion. If you're coming at it from a religious angle, if you're, Christian or some sort of, Judeo-Christian sect, Catholic, Jewish, whatever, you probably believe that in some sort of form of predestination, or that, God knows whether or not you're going to heaven before you were even born. And if a baby hasn't sinned, then it would be technically innocent. And if it hasn't sinned, then it should go straight to heaven. And if the goal is for all of us to go to heaven, then I don't know why they make such a big fuss about babies that are aborted, especially since these are the same people who, if that baby would turn around to be gay later in life, they would probably have an issue with it. If that baby turned out to be transgender, they'd probably have an issue with it. If the baby turned around to be a super liberal communist, they would probably throw issue with it, as well as the fact that they don't fund nearly any of these child care services or preschool or anything that the kid's going to need to have a successful life. I don't think it should be put. I don't think we should be in a position to tell mothers or potential mothers, when they can and can't have their children, if in the instance of rape or incest or, any situation, honestly, in which the woman decides that she doesn't want to go through with it, she shouldn't be forced to because of the law. Um, Obviously, there should be limitations as to how far along you can be before you decide to have an abortion. And that's a different question for a different time that we can get into. But I don't think it's our right to be telling them if they can or cannot have an abortion. All authority should be questioned. Strongly agree. If you don't question authority, you become a fascist state. And, if you don't want history to repeat itself, you have to constantly question those in power and hold them accountable for the things that they do and the things that they don't do. So yeah, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Strongly disagree. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. I disagree. The arts and entertainment is so crucial to our history, as well as having an appreciation for things that actually matter in society, as opposed to just the constant grind and hamster wheel races for money. Being able to look back and see the huge leaps that we've done in terms of technology or art or film or music in these museums and theaters allows kids to be inspired and look at the world a little bit differently, maybe have a bigger picture for what's out there, as well as helping us as adults remember what makes humans special and why we're seen as these higher intelligent beings is because of things like art and the abilities we have to create these mediums. So even if they can't survive commercially, because people are just not going as much, they don't serve no purpose. A society without art would be no society to live in at all. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. Like what kind of school? Like public schools? Like high school, middle school, elementary school, college? I don't think college attendance should be compulsory or tied to your grades at all. High school, middle school, and below, they should, because why would you want an uneducated populace? An uneducated populace is what grows to make really poor voting decisions later in life, if they even vote at all. So I'm going to disagree with that. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. All people have their rights, but it's better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. Jesus Christ. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. Disagree. There's almost everything you can get through some sort of lesson with words and explaining to your child. And if you can't, then that's your fault as a teacher, not the fault of the child. It's natural for children to keep secrets from their parents. Yeah. I mean, even the best kids don't want to tell their parents everything. I don't see really a problem with that. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. Strongly agree. There's been countless studies done on this. Weed is significantly less of a threat than alcohol, and alcohol has been allowed now for a couple hundred years since Prohibition and even before that. And we constantly have had this debate about what the issue is with marijuana, and truthfully, it only comes down to the drug war that was propagated by the Republicans to try to attack basically the hippie movement and Vietnam protesters. And then that spread into attacking Mexican Americans, Latino Americans, as well as Black Americans, because they were found in possession of it more often due to the severity of the crime. They were able to lock them up, and it was an easy way to get rid of them. And then the presidents and certain people in political power didn't want to deal with it. And so that's kind of how we got the propaganda message that marijuana was this horrible thing spread to us. Even when I was a kid, Just Say No and the Red Ribbon Week and that kind of stuff, saying that marijuana would lead you to do crack cocaine and heroin, and you would become a druggie for life, and then your whole life would be ruined. And in reality, weed is no different than getting drunk on a Saturday, So it should definitely be decriminalized. In fact, I would argue legalize all drugs, but we could get into that at a different time. Prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generations to find jobs. No. The prime function of schooling is to educate your citizens to be an educated voting member of society, to be able to think critically as well as question those in power and their intentions, and to be able to profit up their own ideas about what should be done and how to make the world a better place. Jobs are just a means to an end, in my opinion. You get a job to get money to support your family and then to help enact social change, hopefully. People with serious inheritable diseases, disability should not be able to reproduce. Would that include me? I have type 1 diabetes. That's pretty serious. I would die without insulin. It's genetic. So I'm going to disagree because I'd like to have children one day. I think while it could be said that it's true that, through medicine and our great achievements that we've been able to do in the medical field, that we're allowing people to live longer, as well as people who probably would not have made it, a couple decades ago, to survive and then pass on their genes. And, it's kind of can be seen in like a Darwinist way of saying that like the human species is getting weaker. But at the same time, who is the government, or who are you to say that someone shouldn't have a kid? So yeah, most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. No, again, like the schooling question, the most important thing for children to learn, and the thing that we lack so much in the United States, is the ability to have critical thinking and question what you are being told and do independent research and to examine the facts and come to conclusions for yourself, and not just be given it on your nightly favorite news station, whether that be CNN or Fox News or MSNBC, etc. You should be able to do the deep diving yourself, and children need to learn that you can have a respect for authority, but you need to question that authority as well, and know the reasoning behind the decisions they're making, not just because I told you so. Well, that may work when you're little, I think parents should try better to really impress upon their children the reasoning behind what they do, because this would make them better thinkers later on. There are no savage and civilized people. There are only different cultures. Strongly agree. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society support. Yes and no. Like, I wouldn't say they don't deserve like health care, or they don't deserve to be taken care of medically. I also wouldn't say that they deserve to be homeless per se. I think if they're refusing opportunity for work, there's probably something else going on there. Some sort of maybe mental health issues, or maybe the job is just severely below them and they know that their own worth, or they believe their own worth is worth more than that. So I would disagree here. I wouldn't strongly disagree, but I think people still, shouldn't be left to just rot. When you are troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. Personally, yeah. But I don't know what that has to do with politics. First generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their new country. I disagree. It's all about how involved they are with the society and their communities. Your mileage may vary, but there's kids who are 3-4 generations in and who don't really take up American culture, or what it means to be an American. So I don't think immigration has anything to do with that. I think it's just how much you get in with your community, and what are you looking for, and what do you feel that country has your best interest at heart or not. What's good for the most successful corporations is ultimately good for all of us. No. Corporations are not people. Okay? Citizens United is the worst court case decision ever ruled on. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content, should receive public funding. It's talking about NPR. I disagree. I mean, if it's independent and it has both sides of the arguments, legitimately both sides of the arguments, there's nothing wrong with that. How we see the wider society. Okay, our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. Strongly agree. We have lost so many of our rights to privacy, as well as, even the right to protest seems to be under attack all the time now. So we do need to definitely keep our government in check going forward about what we allow them to do in the name of counterterrorism. Do I think it's a little too far too gone at this point? Probably, but a significant advantage of one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. Yes, that is true, but a one-party state also crushes all dissent. It crushes the whole ability to discuss what the best, avenues to go about the problem solving would be. So one-party states typically are like communist or fascist nations, so we don't want that. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. Strongly disagree. I think this is very indicative of the way that politics is working right now, right? Like, you have a situation where Trump has been able to try to claim that, any supporter of these protests is Antifa and therefore a terrorist, right? Well, if he's labeled you as a terrorist and then they have all your metadata, you're now a wrongdoer, and now they can charge you with domestic terrorism just because you're going against what they like. That should concern a lot of people. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. Disagree. I don't believe in the death penalty. We get it wrong, and killing an innocent person is just never okay. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and below to be commanded. Huh. I don't know. I don't know if it's true. I think that there's societies in the past where they probably have been able to get along on a pretty, horizontal power structure instead of vertical. It's an interesting one. Do I think leaders will always generally naturally take to the top? Probably. But do they necessarily need to be like, I don't know. I say disagree. I think that in a utopian, perfect world, we could have a place in which everybody just kind of worked for the benefit of all rather than for the benefit of their power or because they're being told to. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. Strongly disagree. And criminal justice punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. Strongly disagree. And this is seen in our not retention. What's the rate? Recidivism. There's a word for it. The United States criminal justice system currently is very heavily focused on punishment rather than rehabilitation, and we have a really high rate of people who come back through the system. And the reason for that is because there was no effort put on rehabilitation, so therefore they're not shown any other path outside of criminal activity that they've been used to, as well as the institutions that we put them in of constantly reinforcing this notion, because it's basically fight or die. Sink or swim kind of scenarios for them, and so they turn back to crime. If you focus more on rehabilitation and getting these people the education as well as opportunities once they get out, then we'd have a way lower rate of people who re-enter the system after the first time they went in. It's a waste to try to rehabilitate some criminals. Some, sure, yes, right? Like mass murderers or people who blow up churches or do mass shootings or serial killers. Like, yeah, I think they're a little far too gone, but they shouldn't be killed. They should be put in prison for life. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. Disagree. Like I said earlier, the arts serve a key critical purpose in society, and without them, we would be nothing more than just robots. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Your first duty is to do whatever you want. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the planet, genetic resources of developing countries. Yeah, they are. This happens all the time. Big billion-dollar companies go in, buy up an entire area, and exploit them for their natural resources. One of the only examples I know, like actually off the top of my head on this issue, though, is the issue of in Africa, where when the European countries were coming in and taking over, splitting up Africa into different areas. I think it was England I think it was England. A business owner would buy the entire ravines, from their mines to get gold and other gems out to ship them back to Europe. And so they exploited these areas because to them it wasn't worth, pounds. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. No. Okay, the establishment should not just be appeased because they say so. Astrology accurately explains many things. These propositions on religion, nice. Disagree. Astrology is neat. It's a novelty, but I wouldn't say that it accurately explains things. If you believe that, that's awesome. That's your right. But I personally think that they're all written kind of vague in a way that it makes it so that anyone who's reading it, no matter what your sign is, can agree with some of the points being presented to you, and therefore makes it seem like it's got an accurate picture. You cannot be moral without being religious. Strongly disagreeing. I'm not religious. I tend to be pretty moral, I would argue. So, yeah. And the fact that people think morality is not something that needs to be taught. And morality is inherently instinctual. You don't see someone and want to inflict damage and pain on them. You typically, as a child, want to kind of foster friendships and share and kind of just, I don't know. I think that this is a weird idea that morals come from religion, because where did religion come from? Charity is better than social security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. Disagree. Well, this kind of contradicts my point, right? People are naturally good, and then I'm going to say that they won't give enough. Here's why, though. So charities aren't always the best at managing their resources and allocating funds efficiently. Social Security, as a safety net, kind of makes sure that those who need it have it. It's not even all that much, but it's better to be on a Social Security system than just a pure charity system for our elderly, our disabled, our poor, etc. Some people are naturally unlucky. I'd agree with that. Yeah, sometimes, people just have bad stuff happen to them, and it doesn't, not because of anything we did, it just happens. It is important that my child's school instills religious values. Strongly disagree. My child should be learning about the history, mathematics, foreign languages, sciences, government, and economics. That sounds cool to me. Religion, it's more of I think it should be a more personal thing. If you want to dabble in religion, it should be a personal journey that you take, not instilled by me or an institution of education. It's just, I don't know, that's my opinion. Sex outside of marriage is usually immoral. Well, I would disagree. I'm not even going to go in depth on that one. A same-sex couple is in a stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility. Strongly agree. Some of the best reports of fostered kids' happiness ratings as well as success in life comes from couples who were same-sex. They actually genuinely love and want these kids, and they have to go through a lot of hoops to get them, and they make sure that they're well cared for. So, pornography. Porn depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. Why not? Who is the government to tell you what you can and can't do in your own private home or device? prostitution, for that matter, should be legal. What goes on in a private bedroom between two consenting adults? Strongly agree. No one can feel naturally homosexual? Disagree. If you believe no one can feel naturally homosexual, how do you feel naturally straight? It's a really simple, like, explain that one. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. Strongly disagree. The notion that sex is a taboo topic is ridiculous. It's part of life. It's, basic stuff. All right. So it's going to tell us a little bit about how this thing is divvied up, and then we'll see where I landed. In the introduction, we explain the inadequacies of the traditional left-right line. If we recognize this as essentially an economic line, it's fine. As far as it goes, we can show, for example, Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot, and their commitment to a totally controlled economy. On the hard left, we have socialists like Mahatma Gandhi, Robert Mugabe, who would occupy a less extreme leftist position. We have Margaret Thatcher, would be well over to the right, but further right still would be someone like the free marketer General Pinochet. That deals with the economy. Oh my goodness. That deals with economics, but social dimensions is also important. And this is more than just a mere left-right scale. So we've added one ranging in positions from extreme authoritarianism to the top to extreme libertarianism to the bottom. This is like more authority, more control by the government. This is more freedom, individual rights kind of stuff. Both an economic dimension and social dimensions are important factors for proper political analysis. By adding the social dimensions, you can show that Stalin was an authoritarian leftist, i.e. the state is more important than the individual, and that Gandhi, believing in the supreme value of each individual, is a liberal leftist. While the former involves state-imposed arbitrary collectivism in the extreme top left, on the extreme bottom left is a voluntary collectivism at a regional level with no state involved. Hundreds of such anarchist communists existed in Spain during the Civil War. You can also put Pinochet, who is prepared to sanction mass killings for the sake of a free market, on the far right, as well as in the hardcore authoritarian position. On the non-socialist side, you can distinguish someone like Milton Friedman, who was anti-state for fiscal rather than social reasons, from Hitler, who wanted the state stronger even if you wiped out half humanity. The chart also makes clear, despite popular perceptions, the opposite of fascism is not communism, but anarchism. This is true. I.e. liberal socialism, and that's the opposite of communism, i.e. entirely state-based economy. Neoliberalism is a deregulated economy. The usual understanding of anarchism as a left-wing ideology does not take into account the neoliberals anarchists. American Libertarian Party, which couples social Darwinism, right-wing economics with liberal positions on most social issues. Often, the libertarian impulses stop short of opposition to strong law and order positions and are more economic in substance, i.e. no taxes. So they're not as extremely libertarian as extremely right-wing, but on the other hand, the classical libertarian collectivism of anarchy, that's a big one. That one, anarchy. Libertarian socialism belongs on the bottom left. Okay. So here we are. So you can see I'm left libertarian, right? So this is us. So yeah, so there you go. That was my answers to some of the political questions going on. Hopefully you guys have a better understanding where I stand on some of the issues. If there's a topic you want to see more about, or that's near and dear to your heart that you want to see me talk about, please let me know in the comments. If there's anyone interested, I'm also trying to find someone to do a podcast with, preferably someone who would be over here or over here even on the political spectrum, to just kind of talk about the issues and get the whole different side of it, things. And yeah, so if you got this far, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.